Hello, our truth warriors, and welcome back to the Atlantic Underground podcast. Now, Miles Franklin are the most trusted source in quality precious metals. And if you want to protect your wealth, there is no better time to convert what you have into solid and original assets. Go to the Miles Franklin website, which is milesfranklin.com, and use your VIP code AU when making an order. Believe me, you will not be disappointed. Now, luckily for everyone today, we have Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin back with us, and it's going to be great conversation. Andy, 2025, welcome back, sir. It's great to see you.
Chris, good to see you, brother. And let me just, and Happy New Year to you, man, and everyone else out there. Let me just add a little bit to what you said. The best way for your listeners to get the very best price is to send us an email at info@milesfranklin and request it, say the Atlantic Underground or AU sent me, and we will send you a price list that is so far better than what we have on our website. On our website, we only listed up to a small purchase limit. But if you request the price list with no obligation, no one's going to call you unless you ask to be called. No one's going to hound you, but you'll get prices that are as good or better than anywhere in North America. And there are many reasons we do it this way, largely because we have a very large affiliate group. And suffice it to say, it'll be worth your time to send us an email with any questions you hear on this show or that are on your mind, or just want the price list. It'll be worth your time, no obligation. Info@milesfranklin.com, and Atlantic Underground or AU sent me.
That's it. Make 2025 the year that you protect yourself because believe me, what I'm seeing coming this year, you really do need to get yourself into a position where you are protected. And this is something that I'm telling everyone now. This is a make or break situation moving forward. So make sure you are prepared. Now, Andy, with Canada having no government at the moment, we've had a prime minister step down, the deputy prime minister step down. Do you see this as a plan, preconceived? And could this be part of a North American Union, another 51st state, as a measure to protect them both financially? Seems to be creeping under the boards there now. How are you seeing things unfolding with this?
I haven't been following that story, which just happened, as closely as perhaps I should. At first it sounded almost like a joke, but it seems like he's serious about it. That in Greenland, using it not only from a natural resource perspective, but as he says, protect the borders, protection, the national protection from not only the incursion into the U.S. Canadian border with all sorts of people entering the country illegally, but also for more strategic reasons. So, I don't know. I guess at this point, after what we've lived through for the last 4 years, nothing would surprise me, Chris. I think it's easier said than done to enact something like this. But look, quite frankly, I'd be all for it. I think it would be great.
Yeah.
I think this line, this imagine. In fact, I used to live in Minnesota for 50 years, and up in Minnesota, up in the very top of Minnesota, there's a part that kind of creeps into Canada, and when the kids go to school up there, the way up in the top, they have to actually drive through, the borders, and the bus driver has to get out of the bus, and there's a phone in a little booth that looks like an outhouse, and he's got to call the border patrol right there. So, I don't know, man. I think that really wasn't ready for that question, to be honest with you, because I haven't paid enough attention to it. Because at first I looked at it as just being silly,
That's
but
what I thought. Yeah. At first, I'm like, oh, it's just a big joke. But like, there's things that are being talked about now. Like, he'll drop things into what he's talking about. And I always look at, there'll be a big conversation, but it's always the little hints that get dropped in. And the one thing he was talking about is icebreakers and how the US military are not interested in joining with Canada to build icebreakers. The US want them alone, which to me, tells me that they are wanting to go a lot further up north from Alaska and, kind of protect that Arctic Circle up there somehow. But we'll see. We're going to see what happens. And, I imagine the power of the pen and the executive orders from the 20th, I think there's something in the region of 80 some executive orders to be signed, and we'll see what is inside the.
Many of them I think are fantastic. Look, Chris, we lost our culture over the last 4 years.
Yeah,
And I come from a place where hard work has been my success, whether it been in athletics
yeah,
or in business, um, in anything. I outwork people. I'm not the smartest. I wasn't the best athlete, but I achieved high levels of success by outworking people. I was the first one in the gym. I was the last one to leave. I was the first one at the ballpark. I'm the first one to the office, and I outwork people. And hang on, Chris. Come here. See, that's the problem, man. Hang on. I apologize, buddy. I gotta
I
come.
know, I know, I know exactly what it is.
Now she's going in here
She is
because
the cutest little thing ever. She really,
I
she's beautiful.
apologize. She likes to go and mess with my cords, and the whole my monitor shuts off when I do that. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah,
Anyways, I apologize.
we lost the internet for 2 weeks here, and we were complaining to the utilities company as to why. And when they came, they found a cable on the roof that had been tubed through. So yeah, I know exactly what that's like.
And for those people who don't know what I'm talking about, here's the guilty party. She's brand new and she likes to grab my the cord that leads up to my monitor and it goes black. So in any case, yeah, I think we lived in a world where merit was usurped for lifestyle, where you know immigration was something that people took very seriously. Person lives across the street from me, immigrated from Montreal. He and his wife, and got their green card or became citizens rather. Excuse me. And it took him a long time. And we had a party for him last year, and he was so happy that he did it, and so thrilled. And yet that's been that type of mentality where people come here and contribute and assimilate have been thrashed over the last couple of years
Yeah,
due to the illegal immigration or any of the absurdities we've seen, lawlessness in the cities, not getting arrested for shoplifting under $900, all of these things that it's like bizarro world. The integrity of the judicial system and the FBI and all of these things. I think it's time to have a a massive change, and if that's what his executive orders are doing to make our country respected again, not only by the rest of the world, but by the people inside the country who have worked their ass off to get somewhere, only to see it turned upside down
yeah,
for this ideology that your lifestyle has priority over your hard work, your efforts, and your success. And I remember a long time ago having a discussion with my daughter right at the breakout of the pandemic. And at the time, my daughter would have been 13 years old. And the stuff they were teaching her in public schools back in Minnesota, there's a big argument why everyone doesn't have the same stuff. Why can't, everyone have lots of money? Why can't everyone have all of these things and nice house and I said it has nothing to do with that. That's the wrong way to look at it. It's not about equality. It's about equal opportunity. And equal opportunity means you can come from the most humble beginnings. You can come from nowhere and reach tremendous heights by hard work. And those are the things that really have upset me more than anything, Chris. And that's why I'm really glad that he's going to take those steps. But in the movie Shawshank Redemption, Andy Dufresne had to crawl through 2 miles of shit.
yeah,
And that's kind of where we have to go economically. So while we should all be optimistic that we're getting our culture back, he's going to do things to make America great from a moral, philosophical, spiritual perspective, from lawful perspective. The job that the number that's been done on this country economically is one that's going to take crawling through that tunnel, and it's won't not going to be pleasant no matter what. So even Doge came out today and said, yeah, Elon said there's no way we're going to do that 2 trillion. It's not going to work. We'll be lucky to get 1 trillion in reduction. So all of these things, it's going to be a tumultuous 2025. On one hand, super happy and excited to get our country back. On the other hand, very cautiously optimistic as what it means for the economy and for our standard of living and our comfort levels in that standard of living, which I think are going to be turned upside down to a degree.
Yeah, it's certainly going to sort the wheat out from the chaff, and I'm up for the fight. I know you're up for the fight as well, and this is how we separate the boys from the men, and that's what we're going to see. Now, is cryptomania that we're seeing currently the Pied Piper leading people down the road towards great losses when they actually decide to create a sell-off and cause panic?
It's interesting you say that. I would say to you, I would look at it a little differently, and I'd say, was Trump selected or was he elected? Is he the Trojan horse or is he riding on the Trojan horse? Now, I hate to say that,
Yeah,
but my point to you is that what better person to oversee a reset than the master of the bankruptcy and the reorganization, the master of someone who's done this throughout his career multiple times on a large business level, never quite this large. But if you were going to reset the system, you would certainly want it to be easy to pull the rug. Where is everyone right now financially? Well, you have record over $7 trillion in money market accounts.
yeah,
You have everyone who's in the equities in 7 stocks. And you have lots and lots of people in crypto, which has been very financialized. So when you talk about being able to pull the rug, you have the lion's share of the wealth in 3 places, consolidated really into 3 very tight-knit groups: Bitcoin and other cryptos, money markets, and a handful of stocks. And David Rogers' Web, The Great Taking.
yeah,
It's interesting. It's an interesting thought experiment, certainly. And I think the rubber meets the road, whereby if indeed we did see some event that pulls everything down, a banking collapse, which I think is in the cards, and the banks are wickedly over leveraged and undercapitalized, and rates are rising again. That's the bet they bet against. Again, the first
yeah,
time it brought down some of the biggest banks in the United States, first, second, and third largest bank failures ever in this country. And then, they bet against that will ever happen again. Well, look, the yields are rising again. And so if it were some event that dragged everything down, the question is, would he come in and issue constitutional money the way that it was written in the Constitution, gold and silver, a marriage between blockchain technology and gold and silver? That's what I've always hoped for.
yeah,
Or that would be if he's riding on the Trojan horse, or if he is the Trojan horse at the behest of, the aristocrats from Europe and the Illuminati and all of these people who have been pulling the strings for a long time. Then they come in and issue the CBDC.
yeah,
Now, that's what they want. Is he fighting against that crowd, or
yeah,
is he part of that crowd having everyone fooled? And when you look at, I talked with a man named Francis Hunt who said exactly what I just said, that he was selected, that they're doing this to usher in the digital surveillance state. He's already come out and said everyone's going to need the digital ID in order to um, vote for election integrity. If you look at who's got the patents on digital ID 2020, it's very concerning. It's Bill Gates, it's the Rockefeller Center, it's that Gavi, I think is the name of it.
yeah,
They're the vaccine company, and it's very concerning. And the essence of these patents that Microsoft and Bill Gates has is to connect your medical records, your passport, your bank records, everything with your digital ID. So that's really the question.
yeah,
If they do pull the rug. Now, the one thing about Bitcoin that's actually very interesting in the whole crypto sphere is that as the rest of the world has been dumping US treasuries, China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Russia, obviously, all of these countries who have been financing our debt have been selling it to buy gold largely because gold has outperformed the 10-year treasury 2 to 1 over the last 25 years. It's the only other tier one asset as reclassified by the BIS, and it has no counterparty risk. All of these things are reasons why those countries are selling our treasuries and buying commodities or assets. At the same time, if you look at all the stable coins like Tether, USDT, or USDC, which is backed by Goldman Sachs, or even the new um, what's it called? A Ripple
Yeah.
form of a stable coin. They're all backed 80 to 90% by US treasuries. So as people are leaving the system to get into something supposedly decentralized, they're actually supporting the legacy system by buying all of these bonds through the stablecoin space. What does it mean if the bond market collapses? What does that do to the crypto space? The whole thing is very fragile, and I don't know if that's a psyop. I don't know if they're planning on pulling it down, but certainly I could make the case or see in my mind's eye an event that would do just that. And question then becomes what happens next and how bad does it get? But one large bank failure because of bank bail-ins that no one knows about, and we saw the first one in October with the First National Bank of Lindsay, Oklahoma, where half of the uninsured deposits are gone,
Yeah.
hardly
So
talked
that,
about
yeah.
at all. One big bank failure when the public realizes that bail-ins are a real thing. Uh, it's the fuse that would blow the whole thing sky high. So yeah, I think it could be. Don't know, but I could write a short story starting from that question where it is and what it looks like would be something horrific, most likely.
Yeah, I mean the bail-in. I've been following the bail-in since 2013, where I just stumbled across it. We were in Canada. I don't know what I was looking into that day, and I stumbled across the legislation for Canada for the Bail-in Act, and I took a little bit of interest in it. And I can still remember page 144 of the Bail-in Act and what they were looking at doing, and I was horrified. So I started doing more research and warning people, and I don't think many people took notice to it. Most have no idea how long it's even been in place, nor the impact of its actual legal recourse. Do you think it's always been the plan to use this Bail-in Act for, as you said before, with David Rogers Webb, the Great Taking itself?
Well, I mean, I think it would be foolish to write it into law without having some, I
Use.
don't know if it's a plan, but an inkling that this could happen.
Yeah,
And there's some FDIC leaked video that you can find on YouTube where the members of the FDIC said, people should know that they can be bailed in, but the problem is if they do, it will create unintended consequences. So let's keep it quiet. This is the FDIC meeting and laughing about it. And one of the guys says, yeah, and the problem is that the people out there have far more confidence in the system than the people in this room do. They're all laughing. It's like really gross. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I don't think it would have been written into law if it weren't something that they intended to do. And we saw the first one in Oklahoma in
yeah.
October. I don't know if you followed that story or
Yeah,
not.
in Lindsay, was it? Yeah, I
Yes.
did look into that because everybody where the bank went down, everybody that had money in the bank lost it. It was almost to me, and the way I see it, it's almost like it's going to be a reenactment of the
Trial
1930s.
balloon. I
Yeah,
agree
yeah,
because when the banks failed in Silicon Valley and Signature, you got Oprah Winfrey's money and all the tech startups, and you're talking, billions of dollars in uninsured. Though they got their money back, but this little bank in Podunk flyover country fails, and
yeah,
and they only had 7 million uninsured. Half of it's gone. So you have 1 million in the bank. You get your 250 insurance by FDIC. That leaves 750. They gave you half, 375 and 250 is six and a quarter. That leaves 375 gone. And so $3.5 million for this poor little community is gone. Yet they give all of the tech giants and the Hollywood stars get all of their uninsured money. And then what's funny in the inquiry by the House after there was an inquiry and said, Madam Secretary to Janet Yellen, it was the Oklahoma senator. you just bailed out illegally these banks. The Dodd-Frank says this can't happen. What am I missing? Well, it was a uber majority vote, Senator. The FDIC, the FOMC, myself, and the president. We deemed it too systemic to not bail it out. Well, does that mean if a bank fails in Oklahoma, my constituents will be made whole? No, Senator. It would require that same uber majority vote. The ironic part of it all was that, it's the Oklahoma senator grilling Janet Yellen, and yet it's the first bail-in that we've seen since the legislation was written in Little Flyover, Oklahoma. But to me, it's a trial balloon. And
Yeah.
all it would take would be one of these big banks, big regional bank, to be sacrificed at the altar. And you would have a massive bank run immediately. Because to your point, no one knows about it. No one knows what it means. And that's the truth of it.
Yeah, and that's it. And there's still talk that Bank of America might actually be the bank that is going to
I agree.
eventually.
That's
Yeah,
the one that it would be if it were if I were to guess, not just because Warren Buffett's been selling, not just because they've been the ones that have held the large short position over the last 3 years in metals. Um, to me, that would just be the logical one based upon their putrid balance sheet and all the smoke that seems to be coming up from the cracks.
yeah, absolutely. Now we are 5 years away now from Agenda 2030. Um, what they're actually proposing is pretty preposterous, and it's not very good for the people in what they want to do in achieving certain goals. Are they way behind their goal agenda to meet this? And if they do meet this and really have to accelerate what they need to do over the next 5 years, what do you see the knock-on effects of that being around the world?
Well, I hope that this new push, whether it be president, or I guess it's a prime minister or the president in Italy, with Trump now, this move away from this bullshit, pardon my French, this wokeness, this gender equality, the reduction of inequality, all of the affordable and clean energy, and all of this stuff that they're trying to do um, is a joke as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm not 100% sure all of their goals, but it just seems that it's more of the same crap that we've lived through, and it's more of um, the World Bank and the WHO and all of these woke um, organizations that are just trying to turn everything into a socialist nightmare and um, move away from what has made at least the United States very successful, moving away from capitalism, moving away from the cornerstones of this country. So I hope they're way behind. I hope that it gets turned upside down. Unless I am missing something, to me, it is an extension of what much of the world now is voting against.
Yeah. Now, good old Mark Zuckerberg has just decided that he wants to remove the fact checkers from the meta platforms of Facebook and Instagram. I'm not 100% sure, again, that I trust this guy or these companies, but it seems to be quite a dramatic U-turn after telling people for so long that they weren't being censored on the internet, and all of a sudden it quite rightly proves that we were. Um, have you any idea or any thoughts on the matter as to why all of a sudden it's come to this point? Because the way I'm seeing it is other platforms are promoting free speech, and it's very likely that, maybe he's protecting his shares, maybe he realizes, or I wouldn't even say Mark's in charge. I'd say there's probably far greater establishments in charge of these media platforms. But are they realizing that the tide is turning and they now need to be on the right side of the fence?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think not only that, I mean, Trump threatened them all and said you'll be prosecuted if you interfere with the election. And all of these guys, I think, have been coming to meet Trump, whether it be Zuckerberg or Bezos or the head of Google. And I think indeed, um, you know, the world has had enough of it. You bring in on Elon Musk, who opens up the X platform or the Twitter platform and tries to bring free speech back into it. Um, I think people are sick and tired of this type of crap, especially by by the big social media platforms. So I think he had no choice but to do it, and I also think that I think Trump kind of twisted all of their arms and said, "You do this again, and there's going to be hell to pay, and we'll turn your business upside down." Would be my guess, and rightfully so. The the social media platforms like that are all, every bit to blame, as is the legacy media, who have really betrayed the American people's trust, who have contributed to perhaps election interference, who have contributed to people doing things they wouldn't otherwise do as it pertains perhaps to their health,
Yeah.
having to take vaccines, mandatory vaccines. They were painted a story that wasn't true. And I think people are sick and tired of it. And quite frankly, I think he's getting off easy. As far as I'm concerned, there should be investigations into all of this, and they should turn it upside down, and they should all be made public. And these people who think that they can control things because they have that pillar of power, they should pay the price for what they did. And I think most of what they did is unconscionable. So,
Yeah.
yes, I think they realize that this administration will not have any, like, I mean, Cash Patel, as an example, I've done 2 interviews with him. This dude will look right through you, right through your soul. He is the most intelligent human being I've ever spoken to in my life, flat out. And what better way to give prestige to the FBI? You don't want this guy coming after you. And I promise you that. So,
Yeah.
and maybe these people are realizing this is a whole different animal and time to start playing by the rules, not by um, pressure you're getting from a less than patriotic administration.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I'm not a big fan of stocks because obviously most people think they own the stocks they have, and with companies like Seed and Co. under the DTCC actually being the holders of stock certificates, I think again when the rug is pulled in the financial world, 9/10 of the law being property ownership means that the likes of Seed and Co are going to hold everyone's stock certificates and people are going to be left in the lurch. But you're the end user of precious metals in regards to the supply of gold and silver and platinum. How do you see the future for people wanting to invest in mining stocks? Is this something that people should consider if they were thinking of getting into stocks? And do you see the future of precious metals being far greater to actually bolster this and make it a good investment?
Um, yes, I do. I think everyone should own some mining shares. My business started as a representative for the Swiss insurance industry 35 years ago. My company represented a company called BFI Consulting in Switzerland, and so we help people with Swiss franc investments for a very long time, for well, going on 35 years now. We've been helping people do that. Hang on one second, Chris. Can you
Yeah, no
please
problem.
get that? Can you please get that? I'm on a podcast. I'm sorry. I got UPS banging on the door.
It's all good. Well, at least we keep it real. This is
I apologize. You want to ask me that question again?
Yeah, yeah, no. We were just talking about the mining stocks and whether they're a really good investment in regards to, you know, protecting people. There's a lot of stock options
Yes.
out there, and there's a lot of things
Yes.
changing in the world. And I do see part of either a credit lockup or a financial downturn again being something that's really going to affect the stock markets. But as silver and gold always becomes the surety, the powerhouse that backs everything, I was just saying, is mining stock something that,
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I brought up Switzerland is that I learned from Swiss bankers the first 2 years of my career. I was 20 and 21 years old, and the Swiss have a philosophy. The philosophy is in the shape of a pyramid. The base of your pyramid would be 60 to 70% of your assets, very low risk, low yielding, paid for real estate, physical precious metals in your possession, and cash. Now, cash is debatable with inflation running where it is, but let's leave it in the base of the pyramid.
yeah,
The middle portion of your pyramid may be 20%, 30% would be things like 6 month treasuries paying 5%. Maybe something like utility stocks throwing off a dividend. And the top 10% of your pyramid would be cryptocurrencies and mining shares. The whole theory behind it is that the top 10%, as speculative as it is, has enormous upside potential, which both areas do, but also come with tremendous volatility and risk. You
yeah,
lose everything on the middle, on the top 10. Don't make any, it's gone, all of it. The middle 20 or 30, you make nothing on, even though this is an asset grouping of moderate risk with much better return. I mean, U.S. Treasuries, short duration, not very risky at this point. Maybe down the road they will be, but 6 month or less duration. Utility stocks, fairly conservative, throwing off yield. You make nothing on there. You break even.
yeah,
The
yeah,
bottom 60%, 70% of your portfolio is stable and not moving backwards. Even if that happens, you lose everything on the top, you make nothing on the middle, you don't go backwards because the base of your pyramid is safe and stable. So,
yeah,
what I am saying is that, yes, I think mining shares would be fantastic. They're wickedly undervalued, much more undervalued than gold has and silver have been. In fact, it usually goes the other way. And when we see gold and silver doing what they've done up, nicely over the last several years, the mining shares should be much higher, and they're not.
yeah,
If you put it up in that top 10%, you aren't inverting your pyramid to risk, and you are keeping it in position to make really nice returns. Mining shares will have to do better than they have done, and they've been ignored and neglected. So yeah, I do think for me, for people who don't own any, my two choices would be the royalty stocks, Silver Wheaton, Franco Nevada as an example, Royal Gold, and the majors, the big ones, the Newmonts, the Barricks, because I think that when the funds start to move into gold, when the funds start to say, yeah, this is crazy, the markets are too unstable, we need to find an asset class with stability, and they move into those big majors, the returns will be outsized. And then if you want, at that point, it goes from the majors to the mid tiers to the juniors to the exploration. And so the juniors and the exploration you can make a fortune on, but it's incredibly risky. And for every one that hit a home run, there's seven or eight that just disappears. So while I do like the mining shares, for those that don't own any, I'd focus on the majors and the royalty companies. And the royalty companies have the best model of any of them.
yeah. Now, US Treasury fiscal debt always gets resolved by kicking the can down the road. Can this ever be addressed, or is this perpetual debt increase unsustainable? And
It's unsustainable,
yeah,
and I don't know that
is,
they
is
can
the
address
US
it.
bankrupt? Is the US bankrupt? Do we think financially the it's at a stage now where it's unrecoverable from that?
Most likely. And I think that you'll have to have a reset. Maybe that's why they brought Trump on board. That's kind of what I was getting at. That, a trillion seconds ago, Chris, was 31,688 years ago. We've spent about $1 trillion in the first 2 months of the fiscal year. A little bit more. Well, if we say November, December, January, we're well over $1 trillion in debt. That's the worst start to the Treasury in the history of the country. It took till 2009 to spend that much in a year. We did it in the first 2.5 months of the fiscal year. This is the economy that Trump is inheriting. We talk about a $37 trillion debt, but that takes into account or does not take into account the unfunded liabilities that are near 200 trillion. Medicare Part B is 99 trillion underfunded, Part D 22 trillion. Social Security near 77 trillion. Those three items alone, which Trump said he won't touch, you're talking 175 or 80 trillion dollars right there. That's
Yeah.
before the government military pensions and all of these things that are off balance sheet. Our debt to GDP, not factoring that stuff in, is about 125%. There's never been a country that crosses 130 and didn't either default or hyperinflate. We are broke. We're insolvent. The U.S. government has a balance sheet of about $5 trillion. That's it. Now, that's not the country, but the U.S. government. The largest asset of this land of the free, home of the brave is student debt of about $1.6 trillion. You can't make that up. That's an asset on their balance sheet. You can't bankrupt yourself out of it, passed that law half a dozen years ago. So the most powerful nation on the earth has a debt burden on balance sheet of about 37 trillion, off balance sheet another 170 plus trillion, and only 5 trillion in assets, of which the largest being the debt of our children. It's pathetic, actually. And this is a situation where the fiscal irresponsibility hasn't stopped and is continuing to explode by spending all of this money. We just voted to give, as the people in California, my assistant, their family is very well to do, and they lived in Palisades, California. Their multi-million dollar mansion gone. And so, as all of these people in California as the insurance companies are pulling out, and then this fire happens, these people are destitute. Many of them have no insurance and lost everything. Many of them have only 60% fire coverage and have lost everything. As all of this is happening, as the poor folks in North Carolina, the folks in Ohio with the train derailment, the poor folks in Lahaina have been suffering this idiot, moronic administration of ours just effectively gave another $500 million to the Ukraine on their way out the door. $175 billion we've given to this frickin' country as ours is being destroyed from within and destabilized. Our infrastructure is breaking, and we're giving all of this money that we have to borrow, and we're massively in debt, and we're borrowing to give to another country instead of taking care of our own, and our own are suffering. It's so pathetic to me what this administration, I mean, it's treasonous, selling the border
Yeah.
wall for 5 cents on the dollar. It's treasonous. He wants to drill and use our natural resources so we don't have to be reliant on the rest of the world. And what does he do on the way out? Signs all of these executive orders, making it almost impossible for Trump to do that. It's so disgusting what has happened, the partisan bickering and the lack of class, and the fact that they're doing all of these things on the way out without even speaking to Trump about it, or even as stupid as pardoning his son after he said he wouldn't do it, and then heading off to Africa. Now, the divisiveness that this creates. Now, I get it. I'm a father. I got 3 kids. One of my kids, my oldest, is my son, and I would do anything for him. I'd fall in front of a moving train.
Yeah.
But if he wanted to do what he did, this idiot, and I say that, I'm tired of being respectful to President Biden because he doesn't deserve it with what he's doing. And he could have put an end to all of this. He could have said, look, I'm a father, made a mistake. I can't leave without pardoning my son. I know you parents out there will understand that.
Yeah.
But President Trump has now been pardoned of all of his crap. And this stuff is going to end right now. We're Americans. This is a country that needs unification. We have been so um, uh, torn apart. The lack of unity, the lack of what made this country special, the divisiveness is out of control. So right now, President Trump and everything that he's being charged for, it's pardoned, along with my son Hunter. And just like that,
Yeah.
It could have been better. Instead, all that they are doing is destabilizing the country, creating more divisiveness, and making it difficult for President Trump to try and do what he wants to do. That over half the country, if probably a whole hell of a lot more, if they understood the truth of it, would say, yeah, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah. Now, there's talk about obviously drops in the stock market. I think the Dow Jones currently is, we're seeing stuff way over the 40,000 mark. But there's talk of the Dow Jones dropping to 6,000 and gold possibly climbing to a parity of 6,000 with it. If this happened, would we be in a hyperinflationary position?
Not necessarily. The last time we saw that was 1980, 850 and 850, the Dow 1 to 1. Um, not necessarily. I mean, if it were hyperinflation, you could see the Dow go to 100,000 in hyperinflated dollars. Um, I think that hyperinflation isn't off the table. I think that that could happen. You could see a massive depression. I mean, we don't know which way we're going in that respect. And what I mean by that is that really the only way that you can mitigate this debt and or to continue to service the debt is through inflation. And when you talk about all the liabilities the government has and the lack of demand for the treasuries, they've chosen inflation. They've chosen inflation in the respect that they're 70% away from their lofty target of 2%. And yet they said, okay, time to pivot and lower rates again. So does that mean they've raised the white flag or they've won? I'd say they've raised the white flag. That's like driving from Florida or from New York to California and stopping, in Illinois. Well, we're 70% away from California, but that's okay because, that's good enough. And that's kind of what they've done. But the reality of it is that the things that we are doing, not only the mismanagement of the currency, but also the sanctions around the world that Trump is doing, and the way that we have gone about bullying people into doing things like he says, if the BRICS do this, then I'll enact 100% tariffs. So that's not a tariff, that's a sanction masquerading as a tariff. And at some point, the rest of the world says, listen, we don't want your treasuries because we can buy commodities that have no counterparty risk that outperform the treasuries. We don't want your dollars for our commodities or our wares because you're inflating it away. You have a massive debt burden and you have to continue to sell treasuries that no one wants anymore. So you're going to choose inflation. And everyone dumps dollars in treasuries simultaneously at the same time. That would create a hyperinflationary environment. Now, in that environment, interest rates would spike to the moon. They'd have to compensate for the loss of purchasing power, which would then crumble everything. And so, hyperinflation to me isn't off the table. I don't know that you can just make a blanket statement. If you have gold here and the markets here, would it mean hyperinflation? I think that the probability of there being hyperinflation is, while it's not huge, it is on the table. In fact, much of what I've talked about the last 4 years talk about a hyperinflationary moment when just that, the world says we don't want dollars and treasuries anymore and dumps them. There's something called, sorry, I'm dealing with some Florida allergies. There's something called Operation Sandman, where 175 countries or so have agreed to simultaneously dump the dollar all at once in the treasury. And I don't know how true it really is, but if it were to happen, yeah, you'd have hyperinflation in a matter of moments as the world, that tsunami of inflation hits our shores, creating hyperinflation. And everything then, in order to compensate, rates would have to go to the moon, which would reset the whole system. Stocks, bonds, real estate, the banks that are over leveraged and undercapitalized, the insurance companies, bang, reset. And then you issue your new system. And that's kind of why I said earlier, is Trump on the horse or riding it? If he wanted to avoid a situation like that, it wouldn't be through sanctions and threats, it would be through olive branches and cooperation. He could very well piss people off so much that they say we're done taking the dollar, we're moving in a different direction. Now, as minuscule as that is, it certainly could happen. But any way you look at it, this government has chosen inflation over the tough decisions because if they let rates rise and they try to normalize things, everything collapses because of 20 years of suppressed interest rates. All these asset prices got stratospherically high under false pretenses. You raise interest rates to a level high enough, you'll start to break the banks, the insurance companies, the real estate market, the bond market, the stock market. Poof, it's all gone. And that's what happens when you mess with Mother Nature for too
Yeah,
long. And it's true. When you mess with Mother Nature to that degree by suppressing rates and making easy money available, then all of a sudden asset prices become unrealistic. And that's the problem. We're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. That's why I think they will choose inflation over austerity because the austerity part resets the system. The inflation part buys them some time.
yeah, definitely. Now let's go across the Atlantic to Europe. That looks like it's in big trouble with the economic hub, Germany, showing its industrial might crumbling. What does this mean for the likes of the European Union that will lose its funding from Germany being probably the central driver of the economic support for a lot of other countries within Europe as well?
I mean, worst case scenario, it drags down the whole European Union and
Yeah,
it fractures it, breaks it apart. And that's that's something that I think has even a higher probability than problems manifesting here in the United States. It's something that should not be underestimated, and I think it's a situation that is not getting better anytime soon. Their manufacturing base is getting decimated. The cost of energy has gone sky high, and the entire European Union, I think, is really on the verge of breaking apart and crumbling.
yeah, that's what I'm seeing as well. I mean, even Volkswagen. I saw Volkswagen this week talking about their upper management taking something like a $300 million pay cut just to help the economics of probably one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world. And to me, that's a very telltale sign that things are not looking good.
Well, and you know what it is as well, man. It's kind of emblematic of what's happening here on a lesser scale, and it is the erosion of their culture and the immigration issue, which has changed everything throughout Europe, and I think that that's something that's going to come to bear. So, yeah, I am very bearish on the entire European Union, and wouldn't be surprised one bit to see it start to break apart, to see countries start to for example, pull out of the European Union and move into the BRICS. Turkey is a good example. They're not really in the European Union. They've been thwarted trying to join it, but they trade with all of the European Union. I could see them moving out. Hungary, see them moving out. A lot of Poland, even I could see a member of NATO. I could see them joining the BRICS nations. I just think that the entire situation in Europe is very tenuous, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit with Germany being the catalyst to see this all break apart sooner than later.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm seeing as well. Now, are you ever approached by any large agencies, corporations, or governments to supply precious metals? And if so, why do you think they want it?
I am the U.S. contact for Glint, and Glint has had some success with some of the states here in the United States. I have a meeting set up in the near future with one of the municipalities in the state of Florida to talk about it. But in general, most of the people who are running these entities, first of all, if you're a larger union, you're going to have the ability to go directly to the source. Now, with Glint, it is very close to the source. But when you talk about you know these states, these municipalities, these larger regions that might be interested in it. Most of them have no idea. The people advising them have no idea. The people who understand hard assets represent less than 1/2 of 1% of the population. People who understand precious metals are a distinct minority. I think they should. I think it would certainly behoove them. But yeah, I mean, the fact that we're beginning to see this happen, state of Utah with Glint, um, municipality here in Florida, state of Texas has been involved in precious metals very strongly, and you have 11 states that have signed legal tender laws that say precious metals would be used for all debt and all debts, public and private, including paying your property taxes. 21 states have it in front of their legislature. So while no one, not so many have come to me, we see an opening, a willingness to maybe look at precious metals the way that the Constitution framed them with a third of the states in the country. So yes, it is progressing. It's kind of the American spirit, if you will, pushing back against the irresponsible fiscal policy and the madness of our monetary policy, giving the constituents in all of these states the ability to protect themselves. So yeah, it's something that I would suspect we'll see more of in the coming years.
Yeah. Now, Trump is going to be calling for low to near zero interest rates moving forward. And the Federal Reserve are going to turn around and say that they don't want that. Now, quite clearly, obviously, before somebody enters a position that they're in becoming the president of the United States again, I would say that it's highly likely that the plans are already in place. Is it going to be looking like it's a continuation of a reality show in that one person says one thing, another person says another, creating all the drama? Is this just entertainment for the masses?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know where Powell sits against Trump or with Trump. Um, I think you can want lower interest rates, and that's great. First of all, the Fed has been lowering rates on the short end of the curve, and the back end of the curve has been going the other direction, which is very unusual. But it's because the bond market sees the reality of a government that wants low interest rates, soft dollar, and continuation of inflation. No one wants to hold our treasuries. But when you look at what Powell is doing, it almost makes me feel that he's aligned with Trump by bringing SOFR, replacing LIBOR with SOFR. He took the power out of the European banks to control really the in many respects the interest rate that is charged, which would neuter the Fed's ability to lower rates or raise rates in the short end of the curve. If the bankers in Europe didn't want it that way, they can mess with LIBOR. Now they have no choice of doing that with SOFR. And it also makes me wonder if Powell has pulled away from those aristocrats by raising rates the way he did over the last couple of years um, against the not only advice but wishes of like the United Nations, who came out publicly and said you got to lower these rates, you're going to blow up the system. Against all of these bankers in these old school bankers in Europe, they didn't like that, and but he did anyway. And after they told him to lower rates, in not so many words, he raised them again. So I wonder if he's aligned with Trump or not. But the whole idea of lowering rates is flying in the face of the 10-year Treasury moving the other direction. And they've lowered rates on the federal funds rate by 100 basis points, and the 10-year Treasury is up by over 100 basis points. The 10-year Treasury is what the entire economy is based off of: mortgages and leases and credit cards and all of that stuff. And the only way that they can control the back end of the curve would be to do what's called monetization. This becomes Weimar Republic Germany,
Yeah.
where the Fed creates money out of nowhere on a keystroke and then buys the long duration treasuries to push the yield down. But that money that's then created and injected into the system is the road to hyperinflation, which then is the road to higher interest rates. Both roads lead to the same place. And so, I don't know how that plays out, but I can certainly tell you that with what we see right now, I would expect much higher inflation and much higher rates, at least in terms of the 10-year and on. And we just saw the 20-year treasury, one that people don't talk about very often, hit 5%. That's a ominous sign because last time we got anywhere near 5% on the 10 and on the 30, we began to see things start to break, like Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank. The market is so indebted, and most of it accumulated at much lower rates with a lot of these leases and loans and things starting to reset here, have to be repurchased at twice the cost of money. Um, it's going to be interesting. So yeah, they would like to keep rates down, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think the market will say, no, we don't want your duration instruments without a much higher yield. So that to me is where things get real interesting with the debt market, and probably the the pin that will prick the bubble if it happens will probably happen in the debt market as rates on the back end rise higher.
Definitely, definitely. Now, wealth means nothing without health. What protocols do you use for yourself and your family?
Yeah. Well, I used to be, it's interesting that you asked that question because it's something that bothers me. I used to be a health fanatic, at least in terms of working out. Most of my life, I worked out every day. Um, since 2020, one of the prices I've paid of doing all of the shows that I do and working as hard as I am is that I work a typical day 15 hours. Um, and that's the truth. I'm running a company that has done 11 billion in sales. I do 15 to 20 podcasts a week. I have clients that I've been working with since the early 90s, late 80s, before the internet. Um, and I'm a father and a husband and a friend, and I live on a golf course, and I have no time, which is a horrible excuse. I used to be really, really in great shape. Um, and that is something that bothers me, and it's something that I need to get better on. I think we all could probably do better. Fortunately, the eating part's gotten a lot better, and not ordering pizza at 11 o'clock at night because I haven't eaten yet. Um, Try to walk 4 or 5 miles a day first thing in the morning and listen to podcasts, play golf twice a week. Those are all things, but not really addressing the main issue, and that is that we can get so wrapped up in what we're doing that our health starts to suffer. And it is something I'm cognizant of. It is something that's always been very important to me. My life changed, Chris, in a way that I can't explain starting in 2020, late 2019, early 2020 with YouTube. I've been doing this since I was 19 years old. I've been own this company since more than half my life. And I love it, but it never had the demands on me that it does now. So that should be my New Year's resolution to make more time for myself to exercise the way I used to. I used to do boot camp every morning and, you know, lift weights like an animal and do all of those things, and I never felt better.
Yeah.
But I wasn't where I was in my profession. And so trying to find that happy medium, you're right, is something that's very important. Something
Yeah.
I need to work harder on. Probably we all do.
I know exactly what you're saying. We all fall into exactly the same trap, and it is trying to find that work-life balance that is,
Because what you and I do is different than what a lot of people do in the respect that a lot of people will get up and they have their job and they got to do it. But to do what we do, not only does it require being present, but it also requires in your free time to research so that you understand what you're talking about and the questions that people are asking. And it becomes challenging whereby work is just part of it. It's the preparation. It's like, a football player, a pro football player, playing the game is only part of it. It's everything else. It's studying the playbook, it's working out, it's eating well, it's doing all of those things that make Sunday mornings possible. It's the same thing here. It's all of the stuff other than just this that make it hard. But you're right, and I'm glad you just said that and kind of jar something in my head because I need to devote a little bit more time to myself, and I think all of us do in this fast-paced world that we live in. I think being mentally and physically in good shape is very important for, possibly what's coming down the pike.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so the year is 2030. The US has now joined with Canada and Mexico as one union to avoid economic destruction. Peace has been brought forward after the wars and now stands a one world government to oversee it and make sure that we never have the problems around the world again that we have faced, certainly over the past decade. The policing and authoritarian state has removed every last bastion of being free. If this was ever to be achieved, what do you think its purpose is for?
Control. You control the money, you control everything. I don't remember who said it. Maybe it was JP Morgan. I don't remember who said it, but the comment was something to the extent of, let me control the money and I don't care who makes the laws.
Amschel
Um,
Rothschild, it was.
who?
Amschel Rothschild, I think, said
Yeah,
that.
Rothschild. There
Yeah.
you go. Well, and that's the truth. Um, you control the money, and it would start by transitioning into a surveillance state, the ID 2020. Everything moves into a digital realm. Um, and if you don't have the ability to transact unless you have access to the digital realm, you're in trouble. You want to try and break a law? Good luck trying to survive in a digital realm with your facial recognition and cameras everywhere and the ability to not no ability to transact. Doesn't matter if you got, one of these in your hand, they don't work anymore. So you need to use your digital ID or the chip within it or your phone. It becomes very concerning. It becomes very frightening. It's control. It's ultimate control. And I think in a respect, that's what it boils down to. It's control of money, control of people. Um, as frightening as that sounds, what other reasoning could there be? And Benjamin Franklin said something to the extent you give up freedoms for liberty, you never get them back.
Yeah.
And or freedoms for safety, rather.
Yes,
You give up
yes.
freedoms for safety, you never get them back. And and that's kind of all of these things, whether it be cash disappearing, whether it be facial recognition and a digital ID under the guise of election integrity. In fact, there was an IRS memorandum that Nomi Prince received through the Freedom of Information Act, and it wasn't for public consumption originally. And it basically said it was a discussion between the IRS on the digital CBDC currency that was developed by MIT and oversaw by Lael Brainerd, who was at the Boston Fed at the time and now is a advisor to Trump, that they said, yeah, although we are not intending to do this, we see how it could be used for nefarious purposes to lock people out of their money, to suspend its use, to dock taxes or child support or whatever it is right out of their account. There were studies that went as far as saying the whole reason that they want this is to be able to use monetary policy directly to the people. The Fed only has really the ability to control short-term interest rates more than anything, and so they would like to be able to pay you right to your phone to control that monetary policy. And they went as far as saying that if we needed to inject inflation into the system, we could give everyone money with a timestamp on it. Say that if you don't use this $1,000 that's now in your digital wallet by Christmas and only for retail items, then it will disappear. It's
Yeah.
just time stamped. On the other hand, they said, although this is controversial, if we need to slow things down because inflation got out of control, we could take money out of people's digital wallets. The whole thing boils down to control and control of money, control of movement, and really just think of what it would mean from a marketing perspective. Everywhere someone goes, you know how long they are at that place, you know what they're spending their money on, you know
Yeah.
what they're looking at, all of these things. It's right out of the Minority Report,
Yeah.
like the Tom Cruise movie way back when, 1984, George Orwell. That's what it's become. And I think there is a certain group of people who like that idea because it all boils down to control.
Yeah. And as they move forward to the tokenization of every human being on the planet beyond the birth certificate itself, it looks like their goal is to become nothing more than a global human resource management for everyone living on this planet, unfortunately. And I don't like the sound of that. It doesn't sound very good and free to me, but it's certainly, as you say, the control. It doesn't matter, as you said earlier, with what Rothschild said. They don't care about money. They make the money out of nothing and just distribute it around the world for their own intents and purposes. But at the end of the day, it is all about control and ultimate control. And that's quite a trait of being a psychopath, if you ask me, when it gets to that level.
No question about it.
Yeah, definitely.
No question about it. And I would urge people to research, just Google the digital ID 2020 and who has the patents on it, and read about it, and then follow the trail. They also have a same group has a group. It's something like the Union for Cashless Society. That's not the name of it, but it's something to that extent.
Yeah.
Again, it's the Rockefellers and Bill Gates and moving towards a cashless society. You have Visa, who's got all sorts of patents tied in with this, including the removal of cash. And the last two Super Bowls they've sponsored in Tampa Bay and in Las Vegas, it's been cashless. You walk in with cash, you have to go to a reverse ATM there. The reverse ATM is part of the patent that Visa has, where it's cash removal, cash destruction. It takes the cash and it denotes the serial numbers on the bills, and then it destroys the bills. That money then is transferred digitally to a Visa card, debit card, or whatever that you can use at the Super Bowl. And that money now is gone from physical cash into the digital realm, much like most of the money we use, like Venmo and Zelle and bank wires and everything is just digital entries, right? Well, now they take that cash out of circulation and put it into the digital realm as we move closer and closer and closer to a cashless society. That's all part of the patents that these folks own, and they're all tied incestuously together. It's very scary, but you can see that is the direction they want to take us.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is. I think that's a great way to end our discussion today. Before we go, Andy, is there anything that is burning that you want to mention and talk about?
Yeah, there are a couple things that caught my eye. Put my glasses on because I wrote them down here. Uh, three things that have really caught my eye. First of all, we saw that nine partner countries have joined the BRICS expansion. And in particular, we just saw the country of Indonesia, the fourth most populous nation in the world, officially join BRICS as a full partner, a full member. They are the largest producer of nickel in the world, along with Russia number three, China number seven, Brazil number eight, Cuba number nine, who is now a observation member as well. Um, their president Wadudu is calling for an OPEC style cartel of rare earths, which is something that's very interesting. And the last thing that really caught my eye as I let you run, is what is happening or what happened with the gold ETF GLD. This one's kind of sidestepped most people's radar, but to me, I consider it to be one of the most interesting develops I've seen in a long time. There's all of this talk of revaluing the price of gold. The head of the Dutch National Bank said we need to revalue gold and use it to offset our balance sheet problems. gold is held on every central bank balance sheet, an account called the gold revaluation account. You can't make it up. That is the name of it, including in the United States. When President Trump spoke at the Bitcoin meeting in Tennessee a few months ago, he was followed by Senator Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming, who came out and said that she endorses this Bitcoin account, but um, in order to come up with the money for it, we should revalue the gold that the Federal Reserve is holding on behalf of the Treasury, and revalue it to a level sufficient enough to take some of the proceeds to buy Bitcoin. Every $1,000, every $4,000 increase in gold gives the Treasury $1 trillion free and clear based upon their balance sheet. Wouldn't even need congressional vote on this. Janet Yellen could tell Powell to do it and it would be done.
Yeah.
As crazy as this sounds, right? With Bitcoin at 100 grand, it isn't that crazy. And that would be gold, revalue it to $130,000 an ounce.
Wow.
It would benefit the central banks who own more than anyone in the world. They're the ones that have been buying it hand over fist. In fact, the last 2 months of the year, October, November, the December numbers aren't out yet, but October, November, the central banks doubled their 12-month moving average. They bought more than they have ever. I mean, they're gobbling it up. And a lot of people think that they will confiscate gold because they need to have enough gold to use as part of a new system. A lot of people talk about, well, what do you think about gold being confiscated? I have always said I don't think they'll take physical gold, but they could take the ETFs.
Right.
Um, because the ETFs would give them the ability to have their cake and eat it too. GLD and SLV, as an example, the prospectus doesn't give you the right to take possession unless you're one of the commercial banks primarily that funded it. It's called a basket. Huge, huge dollar amounts. And it's not meant for delivery. It's meant to track the price, even though theoretically the metal is supposed to be pulled out unit for unit with, put into an escrow account on behalf of how many shares are out there in the ether. So in any case, I've always thought it interesting that JP Morgan, who paid a $920 million fine for manipulating the metals price, continued to be allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust, SLV. It's the fox guarding the hen house. And HSBC Bank has always been the one who's controlled GLD, which is the third or fourth largest stockpile of gold in the world. SLV, the largest stockpile of silver in the world. Well, guess who just took over the custodianship for GLD and is moving everything into their own private vaults and now has more gold than the majority of all the G20 nations, and that would be JP Morgan.
Ah,
So, which is an agent for the government. So, what if Trump says, listen, we are going to have a strategic Bitcoin account and we're going to revalue gold and peg it to the new system. I just interviewed Judy Shelton the other day, and Judy Shelton, who was an advisor to Trump, it was her, she was his nominee for the head of the Federal Reserve, wasn't confirmed by the Democratic idiots. But she just wrote a book called The Good as Good as Gold, in which she advocates for a 50-year treasury backed by gold to inspire confidence. And she says they discussed it in the first administration and believes that he will announce it July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of the country. Uh, and it will be a gold-backed um, treasury. And I said to Judy, well, how come no one's audited the gold? And she said, it's stupid reasons. They say too expensive and too logistically challenging. She said, that's nonsense. We're the United States. Spend a few $1,000,000, get it audited. That's what we need to do to inspire confidence. I said, Judy, will they revalue the price of gold? And she didn't say verbatim yes, but she insinuated yes. My point is that if they wanted to issue a marriage between blockchain technology and gold to peg to a new system, constitutional money, not the
yeah.
CBDC, to do it the right way, I could see them not only revaluing the price of gold, but taking the ETFs. They'd have their cake and eat it too. And they could say, look, we close these two funds. You can't take possession of it anyway. It's a price representation. Go buy the real thing. Now that JP Morgan is holding all of the gold in their own vaults, and they're all already the custodian of SLV. After paying a $920 million fine, the largest fine ever the Justice Department handed out for manipulating the markets, it makes you wonder, is that in the future? Would they come in, close down those ETFs, take the gold and silver behind it, add it to their strategic stockpile, revalue the price of gold to something like 130,000, which would help them, maybe even higher, help them not only normalize their balance sheet, just like that, to sell treasuries collared to gold to inspire confidence in our treasury market, to inspire confidence in a system that is now pegged to gold using distributed ledger technology to show the veracity of it. I think that's something that you could see happen. And I find it interesting that very quietly they've taken over custody of GLD.
Yeah.
I would simply say there's a lot more to meets the eye, Chris, than people think as to where gold and silver are ultimately going. And as everyone is focusing on crypto and Bitcoin, the central banks around the world are doubling down their efforts on gold,
Yeah.
not on Bitcoin. So it's an interesting dichotomy. There's room for both in every portfolio, and maybe the administration realizes that too, having them as assets. Now, Bitcoin is not a currency, it is too volatile to be a currency, and to even be standing behind a currency. Gold, on the other hand, isn't. It
Yeah.
could be standing behind a currency, marrying blockchain technology
Yeah.
to gold. And with the drive towards normalizing this digital world we live in, that's something that wouldn't surprise me one bit at all. So that's what I'd leave you with, and say we should reconvene real soon and
Yeah.
see how things start to unfold. I think, as we said offline before we turned on the cameras, that 2025 is going to be far more volatile than people are bargaining for. Everyone thinks, oh, we made it through the last crazy administration who nearly destroyed us, but now we have someone here who's going to right the ship, and maybe he will, but it won't be easy. Look at what they're trying to do to derail his presidency right now. First, they tried to kill him, and now they're trying to make all of his initiatives impossible, selling the border wall, making it illegal to drill, signing executive orders to drill around the coastlines, still giving money to the Ukraine, still allowing people to pour into the country. They're making it tough on everything he wants to do. Do you think that stops the day he becomes president? Or dismantling the deep state come with some consequences? So I would say to everyone, be optimistic for our culture and for what it means to get that back. But I'd be very cautiously optimistic as it pertains to, just like Andy Dufresne had to crawl through the 2 miles of crap to get to the other side in the Shawshank. Well, we're right at that tube right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, we got away from the craziness behind us, the prison, but we still got to crawl through the tube to get to the other side. I think it is a perfect metaphor for where we are as a country right now. So I'd
Yeah.
say get ready for a very interesting crawl through a tube you don't want to be in, but there is hope on the other side.
Absolutely. Thanks very much again for coming on, Andy. As we always say here, believe nothing and question everything. And for those out there moving forward in 2025, I think the writing's on the wall. We mentioned about obviously the gold and silver there. We've mentioned in previous conversations we've had that we've got the likes of Russia, India, and China stockpiling this more than people actually realize. Gold and
Mhm.
silver, I think, is really going somewhere. I think it's going to be the foundation of what is going to be built in the future. And if people don't get it now, it's going to cost them a lot more in the future. And they're going to wish that they listened to the likes of myself and you and other people out there who are also advocates for holding this kind of thing. And, if people really want to make a move now and make a sensible choice, again, get in touch with Miles Franklin, email.
Info at Miles Franklin Underground sent me, and we'll make sure your listeners get the questions answered and the price that'll be as good or better than just about anyone in North America. And info at Miles Franklin. Just put that in the subject line that you came from you, and we'll take good care of them.
Thank you very much, Andy. Always a pleasure. And I look forward to talking soon, possibly
Let's
after the
do it soon.
inauguration. And we'll
I'd
see what
love that.
else in with the
We
executive
should
order.
do it semi-regularly, Chris. There's a lot to talk about, and there's going to be a lot more to talk about. And I'll make sure that I keep the puppy locked out of the room next time.
It's all good. We love dogs, you know that.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Take care, mate. Thank you very much.
You too.